Thank you, Josh and Adam, and thanks again to all of you for being here and choosing to spend your time with us. We know how busy everybody is, and so we're just really honored and delighted that you've chosen to be here with us and at the excitement and energy that we have here. Thank you. So we do hope to have something to offer the whole Nashville church and the city beyond, but for purposes of today, the reason that you're here and the invitation that we made and the folks that we're trying to gather here, we've invited you because we've come to know that you are someone who others in the Nashville church look to for your leadership, for your character, your faith, your relationships, your wisdom, your discernment. And so that's why you're here, is because you have all of that in common. And then the other thing we think is that you have felt, as we have felt, some kind of a nudge to align the work that you do with the broader city church in some way. And so just in the conversations that we've had over the past really couple of years, that's the kind of folks that you're surrounded by. So for me, my pathway into what we're doing here is that for about the last 10 years, I've been the president of the Charis Foundation. It's a family foundation that works with different Christian nonprofits here in town and elsewhere. And a few years back, I realized that our annual grant budget had gotten to a level where if we were going to be good stewards of those assets and those grants that we were making, that we really needed to invite more of the Nashville church to speak into what we're doing. And that sounds great, but there's just one problem with that, is there wasn't any place for me to go to find out what the collective will of the Nashville church is. And so that led me into a set of conversations, and just God showed me people like Josh and Adam and Scott Harris and others around town that also had that same kind of mindset around collaboration, and we're trying to do something similar to that. But then just as importantly, he showed me that there were people all over the country. There was an entire movement of cities that had leaders and organizations that were coming together and that God was using in beautiful ways to transform their cities, all on a foundation of city church unity. And so we've been learning from so many of those other folks, and that's reflected in what we're going to show you today. And so we'll jump into it. But first of all, we're going to run through a bunch of slides, and you're going to get all of those separately, so you don't feel like you need to be taking the pictures and do that whole thing, but because we're going to get everything to you later. So with that, we are in a moment where so many faith leaders in Nashville, across churches, nonprofits, and in the workplace, are feeling weary, isolated, stressed out. And there's a lot of contributors to that, but to get us going, I want to focus on just one, and that's disconnection within the body of Christ. I can go out on a limb and say I don't need to persuade anyone that we're disconnected, and of course Adam referenced that research that we have the hard data that shows that. And that disconnection isn't just exhausting us, it's weakening the church's witness, and it's limiting the impact that we hope to have as salt and light in our city. So just as a quick thought exercise, I wanted to give you a few moments to just bring to mind the burdens that you have on your heart for our city and for the church in our city. Just what are the things that really, when you think about it, are just really just burn into you as a real burden on your heart. I'm going to give you 10 seconds to think about those top challenges that we face. Okay, so I'm willing to bet that whatever was on your list are things that no single congregation or nonprofit or business can solve on their own. So when we try to go it alone, we burn out. When we operate in silos, we duplicate our efforts and we miss out on opportunities, and we just don't see the fruit that we hope for. When we lack connection, we lose perspective and hope. But later, we're going to hear Jesus' prayer in John 17, where we're offered a better way, that Jesus prayed for the unity of his church. And the thing is, what if that unity wasn't just some unattainable pipe dream, but actually a key feature in God's design for his church? That's at the core of what today is about, and that's what motivates the mission of Together Nashville. So what is the mission? We hope to connect, equip, and catalyze the Church of Nashville for the flourishing of the city. And to unpack that a little further, we can think of this as addressing a what, a who, and a why. So first, connect, equip, and catalyze. Those are action words that we're going to dig into further as we go. The who is God's covenant people in all of its different forms. So congregations, nonprofits, Christians in business, and in all of our scattered contexts around the city, but with Jesus at the center. And in all of its expressions in culture and in preferred worship style and ethnicity, all of that is the Church of Nashville. And that's who we're wanting to do everything for and with, but ultimately for the flourishing of Nashville. So between now and lunch, we hope to set a foundation based on some big ideas that hopefully will give us all a shared DNA, but then let you take that vision much more down to a level that's more practical and personal, so that by the time you leave, you'll hopefully have some immediate and tangible ways to participate in what God's been stirring here. We want you to leave here knowing, feeling, and doing some new things. We want you to know a couple of visual frameworks that we're going to show you that hopefully will help you consider how what you do fits into the broader City Church of Nashville. We want you to feel encouraged, equipped, and refreshed and inspired. And we want you to do some things. We're going to highlight several opportunities to engage with what God is doing among us. And so next, Melanie Wise is going to come up and continue the conversation. And Melanie's our brand new executive director, not so brand new anymore. 6 months ago, we were delighted to bring her on to wake up every day thinking about all these things that we're talking about. And so we're delighted. Many of you have already met her, but we're delighted to have you hear from her.
Thank you, Steve. And to Steve and Josh and Adam, I think you maybe all shared this. They are the advisory board for Together Nashville, and I'm just really grateful for y'all inviting me to the party, because this has been such a joy and such an honor already. And you know, for the past 6 months, I have had the opportunity to meet with faith leaders all over this city. I mean, I have met with almost every single person in this room one-on-one at some point over the last 6 months. And if I haven't met with you yet, you are on my list. Do not worry, it's coming. But I have just, I knew that part of especially the early days of this role would be learning what's happening in the city and meeting people. And that I knew was part of it. I was unprepared for how fun that was going to be. I have had the time of my life, and some of you have heard it, and some of you are probably very tired of hearing about it. My sweet husband over here, and probably you, Steve, are probably tired of how many times at the end of a day, whoever I met with that day is like my new favorite person. I just like, this my new, I mean, probably almost everyone in this room in the last 6 months, you have at some point been my new favorite person. And I'm just thrilled and honored that you're all in the same room right now. I'm kind of blown away by that. But I am also just honored. I'm honored to be in your presence and to be partnering with you to love this city well. Another part of the last 6 months has been doing a lot of reading, a lot of learning. I mean, if anyone knows Steve, I got a stack of books on my first day. I was like, here we go. All right, let's do this. I love reading. But I've just been learning and taking in a lot and praying and listening to people about unity, about collaboration, about God's heart for his church. And I think it's good for us to be reminded today that this whole idea of unity isn't just like a nice ministry strategy, that it is so deeply rooted in theology. It's deeply rooted in the heart of God, in the very nature of God. And I'll be honest with you all, as we were preparing for today, during this time, I was going to go through some slides highlighting the theological foundations of unity. And as the days got closer to this event, I was just starting to feel this like deep conviction that we were supposed to just create some space for us to hear from the Lord simply through his word. And I was like, I don't know how I feel about that idea, Lord. I don't know if you've seen my slides. They're pretty great. Had some pretty good talking points. So I don't know how I feel about this idea, but I was reminded of something that I heard years ago, early days of ministry. I was at the Catalyze conference in Atlanta, and Pastor Matt Chandler, who no one knew at the time, was doing kind of this opening session before the conference started. And he said something that now, like almost 20 years later, has stuck with me. And he was talking to a room mostly full of pastors, but he said, you know, what your church needs from you, pastor, more than your great ministry strategies or your great biblical knowledge, what your church needs the most from you is for you to be a person who is desperate to be at the feet of Jesus. And I would just say to all of us in the room today that what the city of Nashville needs from us more than anything is that we be desperate to be at the feet of Jesus. And so I listened to the Lord, and I was like, all right, let's just create some space for us to just kind of all collectively go sit at the feet of Jesus for a few minutes this morning. There's a couple of passages that have really popped out at me over these last few months. One from John 15, one from John 17. And so what I want to ask you to do, if you're comfortable, just ask you to close your eyes for a moment, take a collective deep breath, just to be present to the Lord. And I want to read these two passages out loud, and then I'm just going to leave a moment of silence and ask that you allow the Lord to speak through his word and through his spirit. This is from John 15. Remain in me as I also remain in you. No branch can bear fruit by itself. It must remain in the vine. Neither can you bear fruit unless you remain in me. I am the vine. You are the branches. If you remain in me and I in you, you will bear much fruit. Apart from me, you can do nothing.
So first take a look at this slide. As it shows, Together Nashville hopes to serve like scaffolding, or also we often use the trellis analogy that Josh mentioned earlier. But we're supporting 4 key audiences within the body of Christ that each play a vital role in our city's flourishing. We hope to see flourishing leaders, which includes pastors, Christian nonprofit leaders, and business leaders. And we want to see flourishing organizations, which would be churches, nonprofits, and businesses at an organizational level, all working together collaboratively in flourishing networks, and all within a broader flourishing Christian community, so that ultimately our city flourishes. We think that when each of these groups are healthy, connected, and collaborating, the whole city will thrive.
So we are about to take a closer look at each of these areas. And as we do, we're going to share some very practical ways that you can consider engaging. And you can follow along on the engagement form, which is inside the white envelope table hosts, if you want to pass those around if you haven't already. Oohs and ahs. I did not expect that. A piece of paper, but yes, thank you. So you can just, as we go along, you can just prayerfully consider, where the Lord might be inviting you to engage. Mark it as we go. Just for anyone that this is bothering, because I would probably be the person this bothers. I know that you see 4 columns up on this graphic, but there's only 3 on your engagement form. It is because we combined columns 1 and 2. I know y'all can figure that out. Just thought I'd get it out there. Okay. And I will say this, like an earlier version of this slide had us kind of trying to slot each one of you into one of these locations. But ultimately, I think what we realized is that so many of you are serving multiple audiences in the work that you do. So to be honest, we would actually invite you to consider as we go through this morning, like where does the church or the ministry that where I serve, where does it kind of fit into this whole picture? So let's go ahead and zoom in to that lower section of the graphic, which is the foundational enabling infrastructure. Those are long words, that Together Nashville hopes to offer. We are really hoping that we can come alongside all of you in sharing the DNA of unity and of collaboration. And one of the easiest ways we're going to start doing that is just through a simple newsletter. And guess what? If you're here, you're on the newsletter. Congratulations. But once the newsletter officially launches, we would love for it to become a platform where we can just inspire the broader Christian community toward unity, share stories about what God is doing in our city. But if you, literally anyone in this room, if you would ever be willing to write an article, share a resource, tell a story of how God is working through your ministry to unite the church for the flourishing of the city, please do check that box on your form, because we would love to know if you would be willing to do that. We also plan to begin using social media over the next year as another way to just share that same DNA, celebrating stories of unity, highlighting what God is doing. And while we haven't launched that either, we do have the account. So in the follow-up email that you're going to all receive, there will be a link so you can go ahead and follow Together Nashville if you're on social media. No judgment, and actually mad respect if you're not. So just know that that's coming. But the newsletter and social media, those are also going to be hubs for sharing about upcoming events and opportunities, not just that Together Nashville is hosting, but also that you all are hosting that align with this vision of unity and collaboration. We want to make sure the broader community knows about those things. The last thing I'll say about this foundational infrastructure is that we are seeking to be incredibly intentional about having the full breadth of the church in our city represented in everything that we do, meaning that Together Nashville, our hope and prayer is that it will reflect the diversity of the city across sectors, across theological streams, zip codes, ethnicities, genders, age. We want all of that represented at the table. No, we need all of that represented at the table. So we're going to be forming a Together Nashville core team over the coming months that's going to represent that diversity and really help to shape how this work unfolds going forward. And we know that that's probably going to take some time to form, but I have been deeply convicted that I don't want to move too far forward until we really do have that full diverse expression of the church at the table. So, that being said, let's move up and talk about two of the four key groups that we want to support.
Yeah, so the first two are there in the two left columns there, flourishing leaders and flourishing organizations. So obviously, we think our city can only flourish if its leaders and organizations are flourishing. So we want to connect faith leaders, whether, again, that's pastors, nonprofits, or Christians in business and in the workplace. We want to connect those leaders with trusted organizations that can help them and help their teams grow in personal health and in leadership and then just in their overall personal development. And the same goes for the organizations themselves. We want to help connect churches, nonprofits, and businesses with partners and resources that can strengthen their organizational mission and health. We've got multiple representatives here from organizations that are doing exactly that. And so we hope you'll connect with some of those. So for example, if you're a pastor or if you love a pastor and you want to see him or her flourish, we hope you'll check out United for Pastors, International Leadership Coalition for International Pastors, Asociación de Pastores for Latino Pastors. If you're involved in church planting, get connected with Divergent 615. If you lead a nonprofit or ministry, get connected with Missions Development International and Mission Increase. If you're a leader in the marketplace, get connected with the Nashville Institute for Faith and Work, with C12, with the Tennessee Christian Chamber of Commerce. So you can mark on your sheet if you'd like help connecting with any of those, or also if you know of folks that are helping our leaders and organizations flourish, we'd love to make sure that we know who all of those are so that we can bring more of the city church into the work that they are doing. And of course, many of those leaders are here today, so don't leave without introducing yourself and starting a conversation.
Okay, of course, we all know that unity does not happen apart from relationship and trust. And we know that there are already a lot of opportunities around our city for leaders to connect with other leaders within their own sectors. So pastors to connect with pastors, nonprofit leaders to connect with nonprofit leaders. There's opportunities for that. What we would love, a gap that we see that we would love to fill is to provide more opportunities for cross-sector leadership, relationship building to happen. And so we would love to be able to see pastors and nonprofit leaders and Christian business leaders sitting around the table, building relationships and building trust from one another that's more than just transactional, but like a really deep love and trust with one another. And so we have a few ideas of what that could look like, but we really actually would love today your feedback on these. And these are on the lower left corner of your engagement form. I'm going to just run through those really quick. I know a lot of cities who have simple, just like monthly leader meetups where they name a location, leaders around the city meet up for lunch just once a month, literally just a regular rhythm of connection and relationship building. So that's one thing. Some other cities offer leader cohorts where faith leaders across different sectors learn and grow together. I actually recently came across Peter Greer's new book, How Leaders Lose Their Way. And I was like, what an incredible book that would be to go through alongside other faith leaders in the city. So we could explore doing some leader cohorts like that. We have also been deeply inspired by stories from other cities that have hosted unity cohorts where leaders are engaging in the deeper heart work of unity and reconciliation. And I pray that one day we can offer cohorts like that, because our ultimate goal with Together Nashville is not just to do some service projects together and be like, we're united. We want to foster opportunities for the deeper heart level formation of unity and the kind that pursues healing and reconciliation where it's needed, the kind of unity that is hard, but it is deep and it is rich and it is transformative. And so with all that being said, we would love to know your level of interest in any of those opportunities I just mentioned, and they're all listed there on your card. And friends, it would be so helpful if you would be honest. Like, please don't just be like, that's sweet, I'll check it. No. Like, if you really could see yourself participating in one of these, let us know. You're not signing up for it, by the way. I'm not gonna like call you and be like, you said you checked the box one day. We just are gauging interest to see kind of what the room is feeling and what you would be interested in being a part of. So to move forward, the goal here isn't simply to see leaders and organizations flourishing on their own. We want to see flourishing leaders and flourishing organizations in the city working together in Flourishing Networks, which is the next section. But we're going to briefly jump away from this graphic for Steve to provide some framework for these networks.
Yes, and so before we talk about that third column about Flourishing Networks, this is a good place for us to introduce a second visual framework to help us, again, get on kind of a common page in addition to the one that we've been walking through so far. And that's something called the Four Greats. So I've seen 30-minute versions that can really dig into this because there's a lot of richness here. And so we're just going to give you a couple of minute quick flyover of what it is.
It's on the back there.
And it's on the back side of your sheet as well, or of the big sheet, if you want to, because yeah, some of this is a little bit small to read. But, and this is not something we developed, but in recent years, it's become very popular in the work that we're doing, and many city networks like Together Nashville have adopted it because it helps us to align ourselves to four key themes of Jesus' ministry that he both taught and embodied himself. So at the top, you see the Great Commandment from Matthew 22, love God, love neighbors, and love ourselves. So in the city network world, that might look like things like prayer, uniting around prayer, worship, neighboring movements, mental health, soul care, things like that. And then in the lower right is the Great Commission, of course, make disciples. That might look like working together around evangelism, discipleship, or church planting, or maybe affinity group discipleship like youth or college students, or things around apologetics or things like that. And then in the lower right, of course, is the Great Compassion, comes from Matthew 25, serving the least of these among us. And of course, that includes anything that falls under serving the vulnerable or those in need in our community, whether that's the immigrant community, the unhoused, the materially poor, foster kids. There's so many folks around town that are already doing some of these kinds of things and are collaborating together to do that work better together. And then tying all those together at the bottom is the great collaboration. We heard John 17 read earlier. So if the first three greats are something of a three-legged stool focusing on what the church is called to do, the great collaboration is a very important how we do those things. We do that together. And so when all those are happening, the inevitable result is reference at the center, a transformed Nashville, a city that's a foretaste of the New Jerusalem.
Okay, so let's go back to the original graphic that you have on the handouts. Like flip the big old piece of paper over. And we're going to zoom in on the Flourishing Networks section. So, as Steve said, these are groups of people, of leaders, of churches, of nonprofits, of businesses in our city that are organizing around shared mission within the 4 grades that Steve just talked about. So our desire is to support, connect, and resource all of the existing networks and coalitions across our city. We have quite a few of them here today. We have Unite the Light and Mission Increase networking the nonprofit community. We have the Community Ministers Network that connects community and outreach pastors. We have United for Hope that facilitates church and school partnerships. I'm looking at each of you as I'm saying their things. The Better Futures Coalition that's serving Southeast Nashville. The Love Thy Neighborhood Collective serving the 37210 zip code. The Motherhood Collective that is networking those who are serving vulnerable moms. Y'all, it's already happening. You're already doing the things and it's beautiful. And we want to know about and we want to support all of these networks and see even more of the faith community engaging with those. We also, though, want to discern where there are opportunities for new collaboration in our city, whether that's serving a specific geographic area or a specific issue, and explore how we can help just catalyze more networks who are engaging in shared mission. So we want to regularly be discerning the very real needs of our city and what it could look like for the church in all of its expressions to collaborate and do more together in addressing those issues than they could ever do apart. So part of that includes offering just a framework and training and an on-ramp for exploring and building collaborative efforts. So we've been developing just a library of resources that include best practices for collaboration, what it looks like to form something like that. And we've been learning this from experts in this field and from a lot of other cities who are doing it. And so also for those of you who are sticking around for the network leaders session after lunch, we'll be sharing a whole lot more about those resources and what that looks like. But what does it look like for you all in this room to be able to engage in this area? Well, first of all, if you lead a network, collaborative, or coalition, I've already told you that we would love to support you in any way that we possibly can and just stay connected, offer any sort of resourcing, connections, and support that we can offer. But if you are not yet part of a network or a collaborative effort, I would just encourage you to prayerfully consider what it could look like for your church or your organization or your business to be part of one. The leaders of all the networks I just listed are in this room, but also if you feel kind of impressed to start looking at what it could look like for collaboration to grow around an issue that you care deeply about or an area of the city that you love, one of our primary goals is to provide that framework and the relationships and the resources to help new networks form and thrive. So we would love so much to come alongside you and support you in that if that's something that you feel led to do at any point. Okay. Let's move to the 4th section of the graphic. We also want to support the connection and the flourishing of the overall Nashville church, which is simply just the broader Christian community of our city. And one of the key ways that we want to pursue that over the coming year is by building a strong foundation of prayer. Because we know that the unity of the church and the flourishing of the city is a vision far beyond what one organization can do. It is not going to come through Together Nashville's efforts. And to be honest, it's not going to come through our collective efforts. That is going to come through the Spirit of God breaking through in our city in miraculous ways. And so the greatest thing that we can be doing is praying and praying together. And so over the coming weeks, we are going to form a team that is solely focused on prayer. This team is going to help create prayer content, prayer strategy, help us focus on coordinating maybe some prayer gatherings as the Lord leads that, but also supporting citywide prayer efforts. There are already incredible groups leading in this space, like Kings Hill House of Prayer. Krista Huff is here, who are here, and we have been praying that's Krista, everyone. Yeah, like, go away. We have been praying that the Lord would connect us with other, people like Krista, prayer movements, prayer groups around the city, so that we can just dream together about what it looks like to just better connect those movements and those prayer efforts around the city. And my heart is really to be able to see those expand and for more of the church to be able to be part of praying in unity for the city. So if you would like to be part or like to learn more about being part of that prayer focus team, or you know someone, you're like, I know exactly who needs to learn more about that, please let us know by marking that on your form. We're also, just so you know, launching a couple of just prayer feeds on the Echo Prayer app that anyone can join. One feed is already live. It just shares a specific prayer focus and guided prayer each day to help people just pray with purpose and unity over the city. You will also receive a link to that in your follow-up email. And then we plan to eventually launch a second feed to just help share more timely prayer needs for the city, things like major city events that are happening, or if a major crisis were to occur, just a way to help connect our prayers to the real-time needs and rhythms of the city.
Yes, and so you see the next point there about citywide data platforms. You may be curious about what that could possibly mean. And before starting down this road, I didn't appreciate that addressing the problem of disconnection and disunity at the city church level is not only about solving relational problems and trust problems, it's also about solving information problems. In a large city, there's only so much that we can know about our city church and about what our neighbors are doing and what they need. And part of a piece of addressing that puzzle is to carry out research to gather good data so that the church can better connect its biblical convictions with the felt needs of the city. So you heard earlier from Adam about the State of Nashville study that we did with Operation Andrew Group and Barna. And we intend to do more of that kind of research to continue equipping the church with data that is actionable and useful in ministries. And so something that we're also exploring and that several other cities have rolled out is a platform called State of Our City that also aligns with this. And we'll send out a link later with a brief video about that. But if you're interested in being a part of the team that works on that piece of it, or if you know somebody who is, please let us know, because we're looking for people who are skilled at research, data analysis, mapping, web development, related areas like that. So all that's part of that bullet.
Okay, let's go back to the full graphic. See the whole thing again. All of this leads back to our ultimate goal, which is the flourishing of our city. You see all over Scripture God's love for cities, his call for his people to seek their city's peace and prosperity and shalom and flourishing. And our belief is that when flourishing leaders and flourishing organizations are working together in flourishing networks, and all of that is happening within a flourishing broader church, and it's connected and united and collaborating, we believe that the church becomes a beautiful witness to the kingdom of God, to their city, and that the city will flourish. And so we know this is a big vision. And we know there are very real barriers to unity. I mean, if Jesus said that the greatest witness that we can offer the world would be the unity of the church, you better believe we've got an enemy who's going to do everything he can to create disunity and disconnection. But we also know that unity and collaboration are so deeply aligned with the heart of God for his church. And we know that he has already been working and at work, uniting his body in this city and across the world. I was even reminded by a powerful sermon this past Sunday at my church. Jamie, I don't know if you were there. Jamie goes to my church. That reminded me that our generation is like one frame in this big, grand, beautiful, eternal movie that God is writing. And friends, we are not the saviors of the church. We are not the saviors of our city. The Lord has already been moving and bringing about his purposes in the city of Nashville far before any of us were ever here. At the same time, our frame of the movie matters. And we're invited to play our part and ask God what he's calling us to do in our frame. And we just believe that if we will do our part in pursuing the unity that Jesus prayed for, in seeking to build relationships of love and trust with one another, in seeking the kingdom of God above any of our own, we can trust that he will do the part that only he can do, that he will continue to build his church, and that he will cause our city to flourish. And so we can go to that last slide. I hope that you are encouraged to know that this is happening across the world. We are connected with over 100 other city networks pursuing the flourishing of their city through the unity of the church, through a group called City Leaders Collective. And our relationship with this group has been immensely helpful because it allows us to gather inspiration and gather ideas and best practices from all of these cities about how to help the city church operate in relational and missional unity. So I have spent hours on calls with many of the leaders of these movements up here. And Steve and I actually joined about 60 of them last month at a gathering in Colorado. And I can just tell you all that this is not a pipe dream, that God is bringing his city together. It is happening with real people and real leaders in real cities. And I know and believe that he is doing it here, that God is birthing something very beautiful in Nashville. And I know I want to be a part of it. And I pray that you do as well.